The great chamber of the Galactic Council was never truly silent. But today, it was close. Thousands of representatives floated, stood, perched, or coiled upon their designated platforms, arranged in slow-moving orbital patterns around the central dais. Species from every known corner of the galaxy filled the hall. Ancient civilizations whose star charts predated most modern empires, traders whose wealth rivaled planets, philosophers who measured time in millennia. Emergency sessions were rare. When they happened, they meant one thing. Someone powerful was about to change the balance. Ambassador Veeler of the Nitheron Collective drifted into position with practiced restraint. His species had evolved for patience. His elongated form showed the wear of centuries. Skin once deep blue now faded toward ash gray, his three eyes moving independently as they scanned the chamber. He recognized attention immediately. It pressed against him like gravity. This meeting had been called by the Cryan Empire. That alone explained everything. Across the chamber, the Cryan delegation dominated space, both physically and psychologically. Their war leader stood at the forefront. Thexter, known across the galaxy for conquest without apology. His scaled armor reflected the chamber's light in sharp crimson tones, ceremonial yet unmistakably militarized. The Cryans did not attend councils to negotiate. They attended to announce outcomes. The Arbiter manifested at the chamber's core, a being that contained energy within crystalline geometry. Its voice resonated not through sound alone, but through perception itself. Emergency session acknowledged. The Cryan Empire has requested the floor. Thexter rose, spreading his powerful forelimbs in a gesture that mimicked diplomacy while radiating dominance. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly. "The Cryan Empire announces a new expansion initiative." A ripple passed through the chamber. Expansion was a sanitized word. Everyone knew what it meant. "We have identified a previously unaligned species," Thexter continued. "They inhabit a resource-rich world they call Earth. The species calls itself human." Several delegates shifted uneasily. New species were not uncommon, but the Cryans rarely bothered with those still confined to a single planet. They possess no faster-than-light capability, Thexter said with open disdain. "They have not joined the Council. They rejected our offer of protection." Protection. Veeler felt cold settle behind his eyes. "We will integrate them into the Galactic Order," Thexter concluded. "Voluntarily if possible. By force if required." The murmurs this time were louder. Veeler activated his platform's request signal. The Arbiter responded almost immediately. "Ambassador Veeler of the Nitheron Collective, you have the floor." All attention turned toward him. Veeler rose slowly, aware of how fragile his voice might sound against the Cryan War leader's thunder. But he spoke anyway. "War leader Thexter," Veeler said evenly, "I urge you to reconsider." A few delegates leaned in. Others looked away, unwilling to involve themselves. "I must warn you about the humans." Thexter laughed, a grinding, abrasive sound. "Warn me," he said, "about a species that has not even left its own gravity. Well, I speak from experience," Veeler replied. That caught attention. "My people encountered humans 243 years ago." Silence spread. The Nitheron were known now as pacifists. Their violent history was rarely discussed. "We were explorers then," Veeler continued. "We found a human vessel, a colony ship traveling between their worlds at sublight speed. It posed no threat. It would have taken decades to reach its destination." He paused. "We boarded it." Some delegates stiffened. "We killed everyone aboard. 3,000 humans, including their children." The chamber froze. "We took their technology, their biological samples. We believe the matter closed." Thexter tilted his head. And 70 years later," Veeler said quietly, "they found us." The chamber erupted in noise. 70 years. Even among long-lived species, that was obsession bordering on madness. The Arbiter's light flared. "Silence," Veeler continued. "The humans studied us, learned our language, our laws, our psychology, and then they hunted down every single Nitheron involved in that attack." "How many?" a delegate demanded. 47. And what did they do when they found them? Another asked. Veeler's eyes closed briefly. They put us on trial, under our own laws, in front of our own people, and demanded justice. The chamber was utterly still now. We executed them ourselves. Veeler finished. Only then did the humans leave us in peace. Thexter scoffed. A poetic tale, but irrelevant. You encountered a handful of humans. We face an entire planet. That is exactly what we thought, Veeler said. The Arbiter pulsed. Ambassador, what makes humans different? Veeler looked around the chamber. We fight for territory, for power, for resources, he said. Humans fight for each other. They fight for memory, for those who are gone. And once they decide something must be answered for, he met Thexter's gaze. They do not stop. Thexter's voice hardened. Enough. The Cryan Empire will proceed. Veeler sank back into his platform, a weight heavier than age pressing upon him. He had seen this before. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans were given something they would never forgive. Ambassador Veeler did not leave the great chamber immediately. He remained on his platform long after the delegates began to disperse, watching them drift away in clusters of politics and indifference. Some spoke animatedly, already discussing trade routes and border disputes. Others avoided his gaze entirely. None of them truly understood what had just been set in motion. The Cryan delegation departed with unmistakable confidence. War leader Thexter did not look back even once. To him, the matter was settled. The humans were weak. Weakness invited conquest. The galaxy had always worked that way. Veeler's long life had taught him otherwise. You are troubled, the Arbiter observed, its crystalline form hovering beside him. I am terrified, Veeler replied honestly. The Arbiter pulsed faintly. Fear is a strong word for a diplomat of your age. I have seen this before, Veeler said, and it ended with my people nearly erased. The Council cannot interfere without clear evidence of genocidal intent, the Arbiter reminded him. Veeler's eyes darkened. There will be genocide. The Cryans will destroy cities to make examples. That is how they enforce obedience. Perhaps the humans will surrender quickly, the Arbiter offered. Veeler let out a sound that might once have been laughter. Humans do not surrender when they believe they are right. 6 months later, Veeler sat alone in his private chambers, watching Earth burn. The Cryan fleet had arrived with brutal efficiency. No negotiations. No drawn-out campaigns. A single demand broadcast across every human communication channel. Unconditional surrender. The humans refused. 3 cities vanished in response. New York, Tokyo, Mumbai. Veeler watched the footage replay again and again on the Galactic news feeds. Vast craters glowed where millions had lived hours earlier. The Cryans called it a demonstration of power. A lesson. Veeler recognized it as something else entirely. A declaration. The Cryan message followed the destruction, cold and precise. Surrender now, or your world will be reduced to ash. Veeler shifted his attention to the human broadcasts. There was grief, yes, shock, horror, entire populations reeling under the weight of loss. But beneath it all, Veeler saw what he had feared most. Focus. Humans spoke the names of the dead aloud. Anchors paused to read lists, thousands at a time, refusing to let them become numbers. Families held up photographs. Children asked questions that no one could answer. And then something changed. Humans stopped asking if they would fight back. They began asking how. Veeler opened a secure channel. Thexter answered almost immediately, his expression triumphant. Ambassador Veeler, the war leader said, have you come to witness the efficiency of the Cryan Empire? You have not won, Veeler replied quietly. Thexter's mandibles flexed in amusement. Their military infrastructure is crippled. Their orbit is under our control. Ground forces are deploying as we speak. You killed millions, Veeler said. To prevent greater loss later, Thexter countered. They will submit now. No, Veeler said. They will remember. Thexter's tone sharpened. You exaggerate their significance. You underestimate their nature, Veeler replied. Every human you killed had a family. Every family now has a reason. A reason for what? Thexter asked. For you, Veeler said. To cease existing. The channel cut. Veeler leaned back, suddenly feeling the full weight of his centuries. He had tried. History would not absolve him, but it would remember that he had tried. 3 months into the occupation, the Cryan Empire began losing contact with its outer installations. At first, it was dismissed as equipment failure. Mining outpost Varric 7 stopped transmitting mid-report. A relay station near the border went silent days later. Then a colony of 50,000 Cryans vanished without distress calls. The reports reached Veeler through Council intelligence channels. No explosions, no battle debris, just silence. Then the evidence arrived. Veeler studied the footage recovered from Varric 7. The structure was intact. Power systems functional. Life support nominal. Everything inside was dead. A biological weapon, the analyst said, perfectly engineered, targeted, efficient, designed to break down harmlessly after deployment. It was not the work of any known species, except one. Humans. Veeler felt no surprise, only grim confirmation. Another installation fell days later, this one flooded with lethal radiation. Then another, where Cryan soldiers had clearly fought back. Energy scorch marks, breached bulkheads, and no bodies belonging to the attackers. When partial security footage was finally restored, the chamber of analysts went silent. Humans filled the screen. They wore mismatched armor scavenged from Cryan designs. Their weapons were crude hybrids, Cryan cores married to human improvisation. They moved with discipline, but fought with something else layered beneath it. Ferocity. One human, already wounded, charged into Cryan-fired plant an explosive charge manually. The blast killed him and 7 Cryan soldiers. In the moment before detonation, the human looked directly into the camera and smiled. Veeler closed his eyes. They are learning, he whispered. At the Galactic Council, whispers turned to murmurs. The Cryan Empire assembled fleets. Scouts were dispatched. Orders multiplied. But the humans were not where Cryan intelligence predicted they would be. They struck supply convoys, communication relays, research stations. Each attack was different. Veeler recognized the pattern instantly. They were not waging war. They were studying it. They are not trying to win, Veeler said during a private council briefing. They are trying to understand. And once they do, a delegate asked. Veeler answered without hesitation. They will never need to fight you directly. When the Cryans pulled ships back from Earth to defend their borders, Veeler knew the turning point had passed. The humans had forced the Empire to react. And humans who force an enemy to react control the tempo. Veeler returned to his chambers and stared at the star map, watching red markers multiply across Cryan space. They are very good at learning, he said softly. And the galaxy, too late, was beginning to learn what that meant. The Cryan Empire did not panic. Not at first. Empires did not panic over raids. They had endured pirates, insurgents, rebellions, and border skirmishes for centuries. What the humans were doing, small strikes, scattered losses, barely registered against the Empire's vast scale. That belief held for exactly 2 more weeks. Veeler watched the shift occur through intercepted intelligence briefings, trade channel chatter, and a subtle change in how Cryan delegates spoke at the council. Confidence gave way to irritation. Irritation hardened into concern, because the attacks were not random anymore. They were patterned. Supply convoys were hit at mathematically precise intervals. Communication relays fell in sequences that severed entire sectors without a single ship crossing into Cryan core space. Military outposts were struck only after their patrol rotations changed, suggesting the humans knew those rotations in advance. They were anticipating responses. How do primitives without faster-than-light industry coordinate across multiple systems? A delegate demanded during a closed session. Veeler did not answer aloud. He already knew. On the Cryan flagship Dominance Aflame, war leader Thexter studied the tactical display with growing irritation. Another supply convoy destroyed. Another relay station gone dark. Another outpost reporting catastrophic loss. This one to an internal explosion traced back to its own reactor controls. This is not coincidence, Thexter growled. His second-in-command, Vexra, shifted uneasily. No, war leader. But intelligence still estimates fewer than 100 human raiders operating beyond Earth. 100, Thexter repeated. The number should have been laughable. Instead, it felt wrong. How many Cryans are dead? Thexter asked. Approximately 4,000 across all incidents, Vexra replied, including civilian workers. Thexter's claws tightened. 4,000 Cryans, killed not in battle, not in glorious conquest, but in darkness, in silence, without warning. Find them, Thexter ordered. I want scouts saturating every system. No more containment. We hunt. They did, and failed. The human ships did not behave like military vessels. They did not follow predictable lanes. They did not engage patrols head-on. They appeared, struck, and vanished, sometimes using Cryan jump signatures, sometimes something disturbingly altered. Vila reviewed the analysis with quiet dread. They are not building their own technology, one analyst reported. They are modifying Cryan systems. Incorrect, Vila murmured to himself. They're adapting them. Captured human equipment revealed the truth. Cryan jump drives, damaged, salvaged, stripped down, had been reassembled in configurations that violated Cryan engineering doctrine. Power inefficiencies that should have torn ships apart were somehow stabilized. Safety interlocks were bypassed entirely. They are using our technology wrong, a Cryan engineer had said, horrified. And it still works, another replied. Humans did not ask why something worked, only whether it did. The first true shock came when a Cryan military archive station went dark. Not a supply node, not a mining outpost. An archive. Vila read the report twice to be certain. Encrypted historical records, tactical doctrines, fleet movement logs, centuries of data. Gone. Recovered fragments confirmed human infiltration teams had accessed the core systems and transmitted vast amount of information before destroying the station. They are stealing our past, Vila whispered, and with it, the future. At the council, whispers grew louder. The Cryan Empire began restricting trade lanes. Merchant guilds complained of losses. Insurance syndicates raised rates. Neutral systems quietly rerouted traffic away from Cryan space. Fear was spreading. The Cryans dismissed it publicly. Privately, their orders grew harsher. Occupation forces on Earth increased executions. Resistance cells were hunted more aggressively. Entire human settlements were relocated for security. Vila knew what that would produce. More humans with nothing left to lose. The breakthrough came with Varric 12, a fortified Cryan military station, full garrison, redundant shields, elite troops. It should have been untouchable. The station fell in under 6 minutes. Not from orbital bombardment, not from internal sabotage, from precision. Human teams disabled shield harmonics using Cryan calibration codes. Power nodes were severed in sequence, isolating compartments. When Cryan troops responded, they were funneled into narrow corridors, kill zones designed using Cryan tactical manuals. Manuals the humans should not have possessed. Security footage showed humans advancing under fire, coordinating silently, exploiting Cryan doctrine as if they had trained with it their entire lives. One recording ended with a human officer placing a device on the station's command core. Not a bomb, a transmitter, broadcasting Cryan casualty lists back into Cryan space. Vila felt a chill run through his elongated spine. They are sending a message, he said, on the dominance of flame. Thexter stared at the recovered footage in disbelief. They used our formations, he said. Yes, war leader, Vexra replied quietly. They predicted our counterattack timing. Yes. They exploited our evacuation protocols. Yes. Silence followed. They are inside our thinking, Thexter said at last. Vexra hesitated. War leader, there is more. Thexter turned. Our encryption systems, Vexra continued, have been compromised. We believe the humans have been monitoring fleet communications for at least a month. The words landed like a physical blow. That is impossible, Thexter snapped. It was, Vexra said, before humans. Vila received confirmation hours later. Human strike teams had intercepted Cryan communications satellites. They had cracked encryption not through brute force, but through pattern recognition, learning how Cryans thought rather than how their machines functioned. "They are listening to us plan," a council analyst said. Wheeler closed his eyes. "They are planning ahead of us." The Cryan Empire responded as empires always did when challenged, with escalation. Fleets redeployed, borders tightened, entire sectors were militarized, communications reverted to courier ships, an admission of technological vulnerability that would have been unthinkable months earlier. And still, the humans struck different targets, different methods, always adapting. They were not trying to defeat the Cryans in open war. They were bleeding them, slowly, deliberately, learning with every cut. Wheeler looked out across the council chamber during the next session and saw it on many faces. The realization, this was no longer a rebellion. This was not even a war. It was a lesson, and the humans were teaching it one system at a time. The Cryan Empire had always measured strength in territory. How many systems flew their banners? How many fleets answered their summons? How many species paid tribute or labored under their rule? By those measures, the empire was still vast, still powerful. But Wheeler understood something the Cryans did not. Empires did not collapse when they lost land. They collapsed when they lost certainty. That loss began quietly. At first, it was trade vessels requesting military escorts for routes that had been considered safe for centuries. Then entire merchant guilds rerouted their traffic away from Cryan-controlled space, accepting longer journeys and higher costs, simply to avoid the possibility of human attack. Insurance consortiums followed. Premiums for Cryan routes doubled, then tripled. Some refused coverage entirely. Fear had entered the market, and fear was contagious. On the Cryan homeworld, official broadcasts continued to project confidence. The human insurgency is contained. Their numbers are limited. The empire remained secure. Behind closed doors, the tone was different. Wheeler accessed restricted council briefings and saw the truth reflected in raw data. Industrial output was down across multiple Cryan systems. Recruitment quotas were being raised, not because of losses on Earth, but because garrisons across the Empire demanded reinforcements. Colonies were requesting evacuation contingencies. That had never happened before. War leader Thexter stood in the strategic war chamber, staring at a holographic map that no longer made sense. Red markers, human attack sites, were scattered across Cryan territory like a spreading infection. There was no front line, no clear direction, no obvious objective. "They are not behaving rationally," one of his generals said. "They are behaving humanly," Vexer replied quietly. Thexter turned on him. "Explain." "They are not trying to protect territory," Vexer said. "They are not defending supply lines. They are not consolidating power. Every attack seems designed to create uncertainty." Thexter snarled. "Uncertainty does not win wars." "No," Vexer agreed, "but it breaks empires." Silence followed. The next blow struck deeper than any before. Cryos 4, a major Cryan shipyard, secure, deep within core territory, protected by layered defenses and permanent patrol fleets. The humans infiltrated it anyway. Wheeler watched the footage with grim fascination. Human ships, disguised using stolen Cryan identification codes, passed through outer security without challenge. Maintenance schedules, pulled from intercepted communications, were exploited perfectly. Explosives detonated inside partially constructed battleships. 3 capital vessels were destroyed before they ever launched. Over 2,000 Cryans died. Engineers, technicians, planners. Not soldiers. The message was unmistakable. There is nowhere you are safe. The Galactic Council could no longer ignore what was happening. An emergency inquiry was filed. Delegates demanded explanations from the Cryan Empire. Reports of minor insurgency no longer aligned with reality. Wheeler watched Thexter address the chamber once more. "The situation is under control," the war leader said, though his voice lacked its former confidence. "The Empire is adapting." Wheeler requested the floor. When granted, he activated a holographic projection. Red points filled the display, hundreds of them, in 2 standard years. Wheeler said calmly, "The humans have conducted over 400 documented attacks across Cryan space." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. They have destroyed military installations, research facilities, and supply depots. They have killed tens of thousands of Cryans. They have freed millions of enslaved beings from non-Cryan species. That last detail shifted the room. Freed slaves meant witnesses, stories, gratitude, allies. They have captured or destroyed over 300 Cryan ships, Wheeler continued. They now operate an estimated fleet of 200 vessels. Thexter scoffed. 200 ships is not a fleet. 200 ships crewed by humans who have nothing left to lose, Wheeler corrected. That is something far more dangerous. The chamber fell silent. The Cryan public felt the change next. Rumors spread faster than official denials could suppress them. Civilians whispered about human raids, about relatives killed in accidents, about stations that vanished overnight. Children asked why their parents needed weapons at home. Wheeler understood that moment well. Fear had moved from the frontier to the core. On Earth, the occupation faltered. Human resistance numbers swelled. Entire work groups sabotaged Cryan operations from within. Captured Cryan equipment vanished into hidden networks. Wheeler reviewed intelligence estimates with growing alarm. Over 500,000 active human fighters. And rising. They were no longer just reacting. They were exporting the war. War leader Thexter stood alone in his private quarters, staring at a projection of Earth. Once it had looked small, isolated, easy. Now it felt like the source of something vast and unstoppable. Vexra entered quietly. War leader, some within the command staff believed we should consider negotiation. Thexter did not turn. With slaves, with humans, Vexra said, they are not asking for conquest. They are asking for justice. Thexter's claws flexed. Justice is a word the weak use when they cannot enforce their will. Humans are enforcing theirs, Vexra replied. Thexter said nothing. Wheeler sent a private message that night. It was brief. I warned you. It is not too late. Thexter deleted it without responding. But the seed of doubt had already taken root. Across the galaxy, systems that had once feared the Cryan Empire began to quietly cheer the humans on. Not openly, not officially, but hope spread. The idea that empires could bleed, that power could be challenged, that justice, however brutal, could reach even the mighty. Wheeler watched the star maps update again. More red, more silence, more fear. The Cryan Empire still stood. But for the first time in its history, it was afraid of what tomorrow might bring. And Wheeler knew the truth the Cryans had yet to accept. Fear was not the end. Fear was the beginning. Empires rarely fall from enemy fire alone. They fall when their own people begin to ask a forbidden question. Why are we dying for this? Wheeler sensed a shift before the data confirmed it. Long before riot appeared on public feeds or emergency decrees were issued, the tone of Cryan communications changed. Messages once filled with certainty now carried hesitation. Orders were repeated, clarifications requested, delays justified. Doubt had entered the system, and doubt was far more corrosive than any human weapon. On the Cryan homeworld, civilian life strained under the weight of a war that refused to remain distant. Rationing was introduced quietly at first. Temporary measures, officials said. Trade disruptions, nothing more. But shelves stayed empty longer each cycle. Transport delays became common. Families waited weeks for messages from relatives stationed in outer systems. Some never arrived. Cryan news broadcasts blamed human terrorists. But the images told a different story. Not chaos. Precision. Targets chosen carefully. Civilian areas avoided, unless Cryan forces were embedded among them. The implication was unsettling. The humans could cause more destruction. They were choosing not to. War leader Thexter convened an emergency command meeting. Holographic projections filled the room. System losses, economic decline, military overstretch. We are bleeding resources faster than projected, one strategist admitted. Protecting every vulnerable installation is impossible. Then abandon the outer systems, another suggested. Consolidate around the core. The suggestion would have been unthinkable months earlier. Now it was debated seriously. Wheeler watched reports of 8 cryo systems officially designated non-essential and evacuated. Infrastructure dismantled. Populations relocated. Entire worlds surrendered without a fight. The Cryan Empire was shrinking, not because it had been defeated, but because it was afraid to hold what it owned. The Galactic Council took notice. Delegates who once avoided Wheeler now sought him out privately. "Is there any way to stop this?" one asked. Wheeler answered honestly. "Only if the Cryans accept responsibility. And if they do not," Wheeler did not hesitate, "then the humans will not stop." The next phase of the human campaign was subtle. They did not increase attacks. They increased information. Cryan civilians began receiving unauthorized broadcasts, short, untraceable messages injected into public networks. Lists of names, ranks, assignments, locations, Cryan officers who had participated in the bombardment of Earth. Every message ended the same way. "We remember." Wheeler understood the brilliance of it. The humans were not threatening civilians. They were isolating leadership, turning the population against those who had started the war. The first riot erupted in a manufacturing district on the Cryan homeworld. Workers refused to load military transports. Security forces intervened. Violence followed. Casualties mounted. Within days, similar unrest spread to 3 more cities. Cryan authorities declared a state of emergency. Wheeler watched the footage with a heavy heart. This was the point of no return. On the flagship, Thexter received a private communication request. The sender identification was human. Against his better judgment, he accepted. A human woman appeared on the screen. Middle-aged, calm. Her eyes held no fear. "I speak for the human resistance," she said. "You may call me Commander Chun." Thexter sneered. "You have nerve contacting me." "You bomb my world," Chun replied evenly. "Nerve is not the word I would use." "What do you want?" Thexter demanded. "To end this war," Chun said, "on terms that reflect justice." Thexter laughed bitterly. "You want concessions from an empire. We want accountability," Chun corrected. "Those who order the attack on Earth must stand trial under galactic law. Reparations must be paid. Earth must be admitted to the Council and protected from future aggression." "Impossible," Thexter snapped. "We will never hand over our leaders." Chun nodded once. "Then this continues." The channel closed. Thexter stared at the empty screen longer than he meant to. Wheeler learned of the exchange hours later. He felt no relief. Negotiation without compromise was merely another battlefield. As months passed, the human campaign intensified without growing louder. Cryan merchants refused military contracts. Dock workers sabotaged shipments. Entire security units deserted their posts rather than defend leaders now openly blamed for the war. The phrase human justice entered Cryan slang, not as a threat, but as a concept, an inevitability. The breaking point came with the civilian uprising in the capital. Hundreds of thousands gathered outside government complexes, demanding an end to the war, demanding answers, demanding names. Security forces hesitated. Some stood down. Others turned their weapons inward. Wheeler watched the reports in silence. This was no longer humanity versus the Cryan Empire. This was the Cryan people versus their own history. Inside his private quarters, war leader Thexter finally acknowledged the truth. The Empire could not win, not because it lacked fleets, but because it lacked purpose. Humans fought because they remembered. Cryans fought because they were ordered to, and orders, Wheeler knew, were fragile things. The Galactic Council convened once more. This time, the question was not whether to intervene. It was whether there would be anything left to intervene for. Wheeler addressed the chamber one final time. "This war can still end," he said, "but only if the Cryan leadership accepts responsibility for what it has done." "And if they refuse?" a delegate asked. Wheeler's voice was quiet. "Then humanity will finish teaching the galaxy what justice means to them." Far from the chamber, Commander Chin stood before a wall of human faces. millions of photographs collected over years. She touched the glass lightly. "We're close," she said to no one in particular. And across the galaxy, the Cryan Empire felt something it had never known, the certainty that the next move was no longer theirs. The Cryan Empire did not end in fire. Wheeler had expected fire, orbital bombardments, cities shattered from above, the dramatic violence with which empires often met their end. But as he stood within the observation chamber of the Galactic Council, watching events unfold across 100 synchronized feeds, he realized the truth was far more unsettling. The Empire ended in surrender. It began 48 hours after the human broadcast. Across Cryan space, the message had played uninterrupted. On public terminals, private comms, even military channels the Empire swore were secure. A human voice, calm and precise, named the architects of Earth's destruction. Faces followed. Ranks. Orders. Evidence. Not accusations. Proof. And then the deadline. Wheeler watched the Cryan homeworld descend into chaos, not the chaos of invasion, but choice. Civilians argued openly in the streets. Families debated whether loyalty to leadership was worth extinction. Military units split, some fortifying government districts, others refusing orders entirely. For the first time in Cryan history, the Empire's greatest enemy was not external. It was internal consensus. At the 22nd hour, the first body arrived. A Cryan admiral, dead by his own security detail's hands, delivered to the edge of human blockade space with a single message attached. He was on the list. Wheeler closed his eyes. It had begun. By the 36th hour, riots engulfed the capital. Not riots of hunger or ideology, but of calculation. The people had done the arithmetic. Protect the leadership and die slowly, or sacrifice a few to save the many. When the Emperor fled, the last illusion shattered. Wheeler watched war leader Thexter, once the embodiment of Cryan certainty, stand before his council in a sealed chamber beneath the capital. "It is over," Thexter said at last, his voice hollow. "We lost the moment we attacked Earth." There was no disagreement, only silence. Within hours, formal communication was established with the human fleet. Wheeler was present, by council mandate, when the surrender terms were transmitted. They were not cruel. They were not vindictive. They were exact. Every named individual would stand trial under galactic law. The council would preside. Evidence would be public. Sentences would be proportional. Reparations would be paid, not in conquest, but in labor, resources, and reconstruction aid. Earth would join the council as a protected member species, and the Cryan Empire would dissolve. Not occupied, not enslaved, dissolved. When Commander Sarachin appeared before the council for the first time, Wheeler studied her carefully. She did not look triumphant. There was no satisfaction in her posture, no hunger for power, only exhaustion, sharpened into resolve. "We are not here to rule the galaxy," she said. "We are here to ensure this never happens again." The trials began 3 months later. They were watched by billions. Cryan leaders stood before a panel of judges from a dozen species. The humans presented their case with relentless clarity. Recordings, orders, command logs, witness testimony. Nothing embellished. Nothing hidden. Some Cryans denied responsibility. Others broke. Sentences were delivered according to law. Imprisonment, exile, execution, where statutes demanded it. Justice, Wheeler observed, was far more terrifying than revenge. Somewhere on the edge of known space, the former emperor hid. Wheeler knew the humans would find him. Not quickly, not carelessly. Eventually, they always did. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Without Cryan dominance, trade routes reopened. Worlds long oppressed rebuilt. Refugees, millions freed during the human campaign, were resettled with Earth's assistance. Humanity did not trumpet these efforts. They simply did them. Wheeler visited Earth once, as part of a council delegation. The planet still bore scars. Memorials stood where cities once rose. Names were carved into stone, into metal, into digital archives that spanned continents. "They remember," Wheeler murmured. "Yes," Chin replied beside him. "So we don't repeat it." At the council, humanity's presence altered the balance in ways no fleet ever had. They did not posture. They did not threaten. They spoke of cooperation, of mutual defense, of shared standards for justice. But the warning was implicit. Every species understood it. Do not mistake restraint for weakness. Decades later, Wheeler stood once more in the great chamber, older now, watching new delegates take their places. Empires still rose. Ambition still stirred. The galaxy had not become peaceful. It had become cautious. A junior delegate leaned toward him. "Ambassador Wheeler," she asked quietly, "is it true what they say about humans?" Wheeler considered the question. "That they never forget?" she pressed. "That they hunt their enemies across generations?" Wheeler's three eyes focused on the human platform, where a new ambassador listened patiently to trade proposals. "Yes," Wheeler said, "that part is true." He paused. "But what matters more is why they remember." The delegate frowned. "Humans do not fight to conquer," Wheeler continued. "They fight to balance a scale they believe must never be left uneven. Hurt them, and they will pursue justice with a patience that borders on eternal." "And if they are treated fairly?" she asked. Wheeler allowed himself a small, tired smile. "Then you will find no more loyal allies in the galaxy." Far from the chamber, on a quiet world at the fringe of charted space, an old Cryan man was found in a modest dwelling. He did not resist when the humans arrived. He did not beg. He knew. As they escorted him away, he looked at one of them and whispered, "You waited 10 years." The human answered calmly, "We told you we would." Back in the great chamber, the Arbiter's voice resonated once more. "Let the record show," it declared, "that the fall of the Cryan Empire stands as precedent, not as a warning of human aggression, but as proof of human memory." Wheeler gazed upward at the moving stars and understood the new rule the galaxy lived by now, unwritten, universally accepted. You could negotiate with humans. You could trade with humans. You could even disagree with humans. But if you chose to destroy what they loved, to kill their people and believe time would erase the debt, time would only sharpen it. Because humans remembered. And when memory demanded justice, they would cross galaxies, decades, and lifetimes collected. The galaxy endured, wiser, quieter, and far more careful about whom it chose to make an enemy.